We've probably all seen people making complaints about vegan meat products. People constantly ask vegans and vegetarians why we try and make things taste like meat if we supposedly hate it so much, often not as a genuine question. People complain on not just social media, but news stations and campaign trails about how fake meat is destroying culture and people's bodies. Others yell about its ingredients, stating it's chemical slop and akin to putting poison in your body. But why? Well, I think a lot of vegans and vegetarians would jump straight to the idea of internalized guilt. That isn't a sufficient explanation for the scale of this supposed culture war, even if I think at times it can be true on a more individual level. Today we're going to talk about what's even in these products and the often hidden political motives behind this argument.
I like to keep Jesus close, but my demons closer.
While I am vegan myself, this video doesn't exist to tell you whether you should or shouldn't eat these things, regardless if you yourself are vegan or not. Even many vegans avoid these products due to claims that they're filled with chemicals or overly processed, and at the end of the day, what you put in your body isn't my business. Many vegans and meat eaters alike claim these things like Impossible Burgers or vegan chicken nuggets and vegetarian fast food options are filled with chemicals and processed to a degree that they shouldn't even count as food. While there's some ethical arguments from a vegan perspective around the ethics of some of these popular companies and development of lab-grown meats, I won't really be getting into those here as they're arguments amongst ourselves. However, I did want to take the time to acknowledge that there are justifiable ethical issues outside the content of the food itself, and none of this is meant to imply that these products or their owners are perfect or above criticism. The idea that quote-unquote health foods and avoiding processed synthetic ingredients is a conservative one, in America at least, may seem like a bit of a reach. Everyone wants to make sure that they're taking the best care they can of their body and putting things in it that help them thrive. What's political about that? If you've been around for a while, you may know I'm not a huge fan of movements like Health at Every Size and its adjacent communities. But despite these more disagreements I have with those folks, I can agree with them that diet culture exists and food more broadly has always been politicized and moralized, both in what we eat, who gets it, and where it comes from. A more familiar example of politicized food is MSG, or monosodium glutamate. Its history has started to resurface in public discourse. While some individuals with conditions like MCAS or similar diseases may have a genuine allergy to MSG, studies indicate that the vast majority of quote-unquote Chinese takeout syndrome symptoms are psychosomatic and don't occur when the subject is unaware that a food contains MSG. Despite MSG's natural presence in foods like tomatoes, aged cheese, and mushrooms and meats, its history in the US has made it associated with Chinese carryout and cheap ramen packets. While by the late 60s, Americans were already consuming massive amounts of MSG from canned soups, prepackaged meals, pizzas, and cheesy pasta, a series of severely flawed studies introduced the vague concept of Chinese restaurant syndrome, a largely anecdotal illness categorized by weakness, sweats, and headaches after consuming Chinese carryout. MSG was invented as an additive in 1908 by Japanese chemist Kikune Ikeda, I hope I'm saying his name right. He discovered that it was the compound responsible for umami, or savory flavors, and was able to isolate it into a crystallized white or brown powder. While Japan is the originator of MSG as a seasoning powder, Imperial Japan introduced the flavoring to other countries throughout its colonization attempts, and notably in this story to China. Though Chinese citizens would later see Ikeda's products as a symbol of colonization, the product itself was still enjoyed by many home cooks, and as a result, many Chinese companies opted to create their own MSG powders in favor of Japanese-produced seasonings. This is how MSG entered America. As a result of the bombing of Pearl Harbor, many Americans developed a sympathy for their Chinese-American neighbors, and began to veer outside their normal tastes to support Chinese-owned restaurants and businesses, and developed their own appreciation for MSG and American Chinese food more broadly. Despite this, however, the now thriving trend of demonizing so-called chemicals in your food took off in the 1960s. Alongside targeting things such as artificial sweeteners, pesticides, and dyes, MSG was included as a dangerous synthesized chemical. While MSG had been quietly added to many American foods ranging from soups to military rations, Americans associated it with Chinese food, and this caused them to reflect poorly on the restaurants and businesses they believed to be feeding them unsafe ingredients. Both the rise and fall of MSG's reputation in America was a political one. Americans in the 40s and 50s began to enjoy and appreciate it due to a shared anger at Japan. As Japanese citizens were sent to internment camps for their ethnicity alone and dehumanized in both these camps and to the public, white Americans veered into Chinatowns and small local restaurants to support the Chinese Americans as fellow victims of Japan. In turn, the purity culture surrounding food began to take hold in the 60s, and as the solidarity between white and Chinese Americans faded, it was replaced by prejudice and fallacy-based fear around the food that they'd previously enjoyed. More recent and proper studies have shown people claiming to have an MSG sensitivity or allergy do not experience these symptoms when they don't know that they're consuming MSG. And as such, it's really only the association with Chinese food and the subsequent nocebo effect that was causing the reaction. MSG is perfectly safe and very chemically similar to table salt. Everything is a quote-unquote chemical. You are made of chemicals. Oxygen is a chemical. Water is a chemical. Chemical is not a bad word. The universe is made of chemicals, and that means so is everything inside of it, including the most pesticide-free, non-GMO, $10 tiny little tomato, and you. MSG's fraught international history is far from the only example of politics and food intertwining. Foods ranging from fry bread, Spam, pineapples, collard greens, and graham crackers, among many others, each have their own special history. Some as symbols of resilience and cultural perseverance, such as fry bread or collard greens, but others with international associations with war rations, such as Spam, and still others with long-forgotten religious movements you may have only heard of through, hey, did you know that cornflakes were invented to stop you from jerking off? But this video is about vegan meat, so let's move on. The most apolitical seeming argument accepted when regarding meat substitutes is what's actually in them. Just to prove a point here, we're going to compare two similar products: uncooked Impossible ground beef and just plain old Kroger ground beef, and they both use the same serving size. Impossible burgers are by far the most common vegan meat on the market. You can get them at Walmart, Target, Kroger, pretty much anywhere else that sells food, and most fast food chains and restaurants that serve a meat alternative use this Impossible patty. Looking at them side by side, the calorie count is pretty close, and the protein is identical. Cholesterol is 0 on the Impossible beef, and cholesterol in the cow beef isn't great, but not horrible. Meanwhile, the sodium in the Impossible beef is quite high in comparison. Neither of these things are really a health food nutrition-wise, especially not when turned into a burger. But they are not terribly dissimilar, especially with protein being the main thing often thrown around at vegans as an issue. As well as my obligatory note that veganism is an ethics-based boycott, not a health movement. Of course, that being said, where people usually look is the ingredients. Many people are quick to shout, see, the beef is just beef. There's all those additives and chemicals in the fake meat. But what actually are those ingredients, disregarding the obvious everything is a chemical that I feel compelled to add? I won't be going over the normal ingredients that I think we can all read and tell what they mean. I think everyone watching this knows what soy or water or starch are, but for all the don't eat anything you can't pronounce people, soy hemoglobin is simply hemoglobin or heme derived from soy. Hemoglobin is what gives beef its bloody flavor, and heme in combination with water is what beef is actually bleeding when you cut into it. The compound itself is the same as what's found in your own body and that of a cow. It's just derived from a plant instead of animal tissue. Mixed tocopherols is a combination of sources to acquire vitamin E and is found in olive oil, nuts, spinach, and other vegetable oils. As there are a multitude of different types of vitamin E, this is just simply saying it contains multiple of them. L-tryptophan is an amino acid that helps us digest protein. It's found naturally in meat, eggs, soy, chickpeas, and many other foods. All the other scary big chemical words on this ingredient list fall into the same category of everything I just read you. The beef contains many of these chemical compounds as well. However, Impossible meat was created by us, cows were not. Since these things are technically additives, they have to be listed. That being said, these things have the same structure as what is in beef. The vitamins found in beef are not any different from the ones added to fake meat on a chemical level. They simply come from a different source and are added to make the nutritional content of a man-made product comparable to that of meat. They are not more or less bad for you depending on if they are isolated and added to something or come already in the food source. Think of it like hiding a vitamin supplement in your food. I've said it before and I'll say it again, but the naturalistic fallacy is really the only thing guiding this fear. The idea that the long list of things we add to stimulate beef is scary because we added it, even if it's the same ingredients, has no basis when your body treats it no differently and its physical chemistry does not differ from that naturally occurring in beef. Well, of course, not all vegan meats are created equal. I actually really hate Impossible beef because I hated normal beef before I was vegan. This general consensus of if you can't pronounce it, don't eat it is just naturalistic fallacy scare tactics. It's fine to not enjoy eating a food. That is not the same as spreading misinformation about that food. All that being said, however, I have no intention to pretend that there aren't any issues with highly processed foods or the food industry overall. And even if I see meat alternatives as a more sustainable and ethical choice within that industry, it's still ultimately a part of it. This video isn't about the corruption of companies like Frito-Lay or food chemistry, so I'm not going to stick on that topic too long, but I'll have some videos below about it by other creators who go into it if that's something that interests you. While I'm not going to cover every damaging behavior of food companies here, the area in which the supposed culture war around meat alternatives exists is a collision between capitalist interests and often religiously influenced purity culture. The meat, dairy, and egg industries in the United States are extremely powerful. When we think of companies influencing laws that most American citizens agree are bad for us, we usually think of gas companies, instances like ExxonMobil being aware of their product causing climate change literal decades before the general public and lobbying governments to de-incentivize green energy. These types of behavior, however, aren't exclusive to well-known pollutants or tech giants. 7 American states ban lab-grown meat. Iowa has a law banning meat alternatives from being labeled with meat-type words. Just Egg's parent company, despite being the first to commercially sell lab-grown meat, is banned from doing so in the US, despite being a US-based company. And the American Egg Board sued Just Egg over their vegan mayo, stating it was quote-unquote misleading the public. Aside from attempts to shut down animal product alternatives, here's something that you may be more familiar with.
What do you fight?
Wheat bones, a never-ending supply of milk, and chocolate milk.
Want strong bones? The calcium in milk helps make your bones strong.
The Got Milk campaign was started in 1993 and continued up until 2014. It promoted milk as a health food necessary for mainly healthy children and their bone growth. It's where the idea of drink your milk, it'll help you grow big and strong, that we all heard growing up originated. Despite this, there is actually no evidence to suggest that milk is a necessary part of a healthy diet. A huge portion of the human population is actually lactose intolerant. More than is not lactose intolerant. The dairy industry in the US, however, produces a surplus. This fact is also why we have the cheese caves. As milk is not shelf-stable, but the government encourages dairy producers to create this overproduction. However, in order to keep prices stable as a result of this overproduction, the USDA has repeatedly bailed out the dairy industry and funded programs like Got Milk and included milk as a requirement in school lunches. That being said, many of the milks sold in American public schools and drank in homes come from mass-scale factory farming. And even disregarding my own moral gripes about this, it also has a negative impact on the people consuming it. Due to the underwhelming veterinary care and cleanliness standards, as well as a need for massive amounts of production, dairy cows in factory farms are often given hormones and antibiotics in order to stave off infection from poor living conditions, and hormones to amp up milk production. Unfortunately, these antibiotics and hormones are often included in the milk even after processing, and can actually cause adverse health effects, not strong, healthy bones. Despite this, the profit incentives of an existing industry are more enticing to both factory farm owners and a government seeking to maintain a stable economy. These things are a motivator for advertisements like Just Milk, alongside laws banning meat alternatives and frequent lawsuits by egg and dairy producers against alternatives. These industries are giants, and both the government and business owners have incentive to keep them running at max capacity. Okay, so sure, people like to make money. I think we're all aware of that. I'm sure that there's probably people bitching that I still haven't gotten to why this aligns with religion or conservatism, so let's get into that. Purity culture is extremely pervasive in American Protestantism and, as a result, the larger American system. Many other creators have talked about the overlap in wellness influencers and similar phenomenon, why crunchy moms on TikTok and organic homesteaders often fall into the alt-right pipeline. While the idea of growing your own food or eating wholesome balanced meals seems rather apolitical and alternatively could even lean more in a leftist direction of less reliance on capitalism, that's not what we're seeing on a larger scale. The idea of purity culture and diet culture have long overlapped. The idea that your body is a temple, and while often used to demonize casual sex or tattoos and piercings, it's also applied to what you put in your body, that it must be pure in some way, whether that be in the literal God-made cows, not soy chemical patty, or a more holistic disdain ranging from vaccines, artificial dyes, makeup, and of course processed foods. The right's war against meat alternatives combines purity culture, its propensity for pseudoscience, hatred of supposed wokeness, and love for tradition into one monster that can be hard to dissect. So for this section, I'm going to break it down into parts. I have another video on the whole discussion of the word woke in general, but this video is already long, so let's just go over it again a little bit more quickly. The term woke actually originated from AAVE and is relatively straightforward. It's a descriptor for someone becoming awakened to systemic racism, to be aware of racial prejudice and the way it impacts them and their community. However, this term has warped into kind of a catch-all for liberal or leftist ideas by the right. While certain things are pretty universally deemed to be woke by alt-right figures and can be pretty easily followed as to why, other things such as colored hair, enjoying certain media, or in this instance veganism, can be a bit more confusing to unpack. The word woke and its variants are more broadly used to create an us versus them. So while something like bright colored hair or men wearing nail polish is not inherently political, the stereotypes used in combination with this phrasing in order to manufacture an other play into it. If you fall outside a specific brand of American conservative Christianity, you are woke, because you are the other, even if you yourself are a Christian, white, straight, what have you. In this way, veganism is woke and therefore bad in a surprisingly straightforward way. It is an awareness of injustice, and it is challenging tradition. This is also why, while a lot of the products demonized are labeled as plant-based, when it comes down to the arguments and who we see most frequently targeted by harassment, it's more commonly self-described vegans than supposedly plant-based people. Veganism is an ethical stance resulting in a boycott, and plant-based is simply a diet choice. While we share many of the same food choices, vegans tend to be the ones calling out mistreatment of not just animals, but employees of these companies and wrongdoings of larger corporate figures. Veganism is an ethical-based lifestyle. Plant-based is a diet the same as not eating carbs. While I won't outright state far-right people are just wholly incapable of being compassionate or kind on any level, their political beliefs are ones that are deeply individualistic and place blame on victims of violence and oppression on the victims themselves, and simultaneously, as a result, refuse to acknowledge them as such. Despite this, there exists somewhat of a contradiction in that they see themselves as the victim, and this comes from two kind of variations of the same thing. The status quo they benefit from is changing, not tearing them down, but affording their privileges to others as well, and people with whom their morals conflict due to usually not subscribing to their religion being afforded more respect or acceptance, their existence becoming socially appropriate. The alt-right movement is made up of a slew of smaller movements in which privileged groups claim oppression. White replacement theory, red pill communities and incels, the Christian persecution complex, their transing your kids rhetoric, pseudoscientists claiming their work is suppressed. There's a ton of them. In this way, we see vegan alternatives as a threat that fits right in with these ideas. While gay marriage being legalized impedes in them in no way, it is allowing people to live in a way different from them, and that is not acceptable, which leads me into my next point. Conservatism, by its very name, is deeply focused on preserving tradition. Conservatism at its core is the appeal to tradition fallacy manifesting as a massively powerful political movement. As I stated in the last chapter, even if they are allowed to live within their own traditions, many of those traditions have, traditionally been forced upon society as a whole. It's not good enough to be allowed to continue having your own beliefs when those beliefs mean no one else is allowed to change either. So while gay marriage or immigration or yes, vegan meat may not meaningfully impact them in any way, allowing them means people are allowed to exit the box that they've created, and they decided everyone needs to sit within. Obviously, on a less dramatic scale, this is applicable to the availability of vegan options. The degree of fear-mongering and aggression over the Impossible Whopper seems ridiculous to the average person. Just don't order it. Problem solved. But the issue arises in that it challenges a wider paradigm. It's not only allowed, but makes it accessible to be a person living outside of their box. It accommodates people choosing to live differently from them. From their perspective, it enables it. Conservatism is fundamentally opposed to change, be it interpersonally or on a larger societal scale. And of course, this change focuses on two things they have a particular hatred for: compassion for the other, in this case non-human animals, and concern about climate change. And enough people now are caring about these things to have a profitable industry based around them. Finally, we have the last two major pieces of the puzzle. I don't think it's news to anyone that the current American right loves pseudoscience. RFK alone is evidence of that, but alongside him comes a terror over vaccine mandates, overpriced supplement ads, 5G gives you cancer, ivermectin, MMS, colloidal silver, and a host of other misused or even dangerous supposed medication. This is where religiosity and the conspiratorial thinking of conservatives tend to overlap, and simultaneously why it's so hard to change their minds. When you did not come to hold a belief on a rational, evidence-based basis, those things are not going to convince you otherwise. They're not your motivator for holding that belief. Many politicians, beloved by the right, manipulate their religious voter base by warping these modern concepts and conspiracy theories to be woven into the religion itself. They're aware that, 1, religion is dangerously easy to manipulate as a means of control, both in the past and currently. 2, invoking this religion makes them inherently more trustworthy to their voters. And 3, these voters will not question their religion. Even as a pretty big hater of religion, I can admit ideas like microchips and vaccines have objectively nothing to do with Christianity. The Bible never said autism is demon possession, and yet Greg Locke is perfectly happy to preach that it is. This isn't because Christians are inherently more gullible or because the religion says anything remotely related to these topics. It's because politicians know their audience, both lobbyists and voters. and they find a way to make them fit together. The previously discussed economic motives are pursued by incorporating them into the beliefs of the political party already much more sympathetic to the capitalist system they thrive in. And with a sort of built-in trust mechanic, that if they invoke this idea, the people that they want to listen to them are a lot more likely to do so. While the Bible may say jack shit about eating tofu, it does enforce misogynistic gender roles that many American Christians uphold and care about. And they know that they're talking to a group in which do your own research is synonymous with listening to them and other people who support them. So it's not terribly hard to tell a group of people who don't know how hormones work that soy contains enough estrogen to make you into a scary little twink who eats tofu and can't lift a bag of grilled charcoal. Vaccines didn't exist when the Bible was written, but it does tell you to take good care of your body and be careful what you put in it. It also contains multiple stories about governments forcing people to do sinful acts and defy God. It's not hard to connect a vaccine passport to the mark of the beast, especially to a group who, again, do your own research means ask the politician. And of course, I think by now everyone with like a fifth of a brain is aware that Mr. 2 Corinthians Donald Trump is not going to church every Sunday. But he does get paid a fuck ton of money by tech, oil, food, real estate, and far more industries, and he's already built in these people's trust. At the end of the day, food has always been and will always be political. Who has it, where it came from, what's in it, and what corporations and governments have to say about it. That's not always a bad thing. Processed food overall isn't great for you. You can't live off hot Cheetos even if they were specifically designed for you to want to do so. Companies like Just Egg or Morningstar aren't perfect. Milk is not a necessary part of a healthy diet, but it's probably not going to hurt you to drink it occasionally either. We all need to be more conscious of where our food comes from. Not just about where that money is going, but how the workers and animals used to create it are treated. Why it's made the way it is, and why you have the feelings you do about it. Why you may judge what choices someone else makes about their food, and if those choices are based on political rhetoric or xenophobia, or if they're really just a personal preference. Food will always be political, but that also means it can be used to build solidarity and community, that it can help us remember what our ancestors went through and pass on their stories and skills, and that it can help us connect with others and share parts of ourselves with them, be it through a cultural dish or taking your friend to a vegan restaurant. So with that, stay curious, keep questioning shit, and listen to experts, not politicians. Thanks for watching, guys. If you'd like this video, please drop me a like and subscription to help out the channel. I made a lot of new animations and shit for this video, so it took a lot of time. Until next time, hade.
The children think too much. They've hardly a fear of God. Always asking questions they should only wish away.